So we'll go through a bit of a walkthrough from the end user perspective, and then I'll show you a bit of the back end. So when you first log into the dailies, you'll see that you don't get very much at all, really. You're just presented with the envelope, and it's up to you just to decide what you need to do about that. So upon working that out, you are presented with your first task. So as soon as you make that first decision, you have a purpose. You have something that you need to do. And once you've viewed this, you'll see that something's happened, something's changed. There's immediate feedback to tell them that they've been successful at working out what to do that first time. So it's a way of still giving feedback without giving instruction. They're still getting that reinforcement that they're on the right track without having to refer to a list of, you must click here and do this. So you'll see there's a preliminary task just to allow people to get their feet wet, get used to the idea of a self-directed environment. And the first thing that you do get is a little map of sorts. And the idea behind this is to draw on the idea of grinding. And World of Warcraft really uses the concept of grinding, of repeating a task to encourage skill development. So often you'll get quests that ask you to kill X number of things, so you're doing it repeated times. Same here, you're locating objects, and you're doing it multiple times. You're doing the task over and over to reinforce that skill. The primary idea here is to get people navigating to significant sites in Moodle. So in our particular Moodle installation, we have a staff support site, so Moodle 101, that we want to make them aware of. We also have an equivalent site for students. And the third task is aimed at introducing profiles. And it's particularly applicable since we're moving from Blackboard, in which nobody had a profile. It's something that's new in Moodle. Now you'll see, once you've viewed that map, you have three options. And I won't actually go and do the task just for time reasons. But this three-option idea really stems from Angry Birds and the fact that you can complete a level to different competencies. So you've got the ability to complete a level quickly with a simple competency. You also have the ability to complete the level to a really high standard. So if you are just getting used to the environment or are initially a low skill level, you can still get the satisfaction of levelling up, of getting to the next level. But in the same way, if you are a more advanced user or you already feel comfortable in the environment, you already have a reasonable skill base, you can do a 3-star completion. So let's say that I'll choose a 1-star. The way that the design in Moodle works using primarily labels means that you only get the choice for self-completion on labels. So we are to some extent relying on accurate self-reporting. You'll see that I've also got something that drives me to do the next task. The way these tasks are structured is, again, based on the Warcraft idea of daily quests, which is something that it's a simple task that allows you to finish it in maybe 10 or 15 minutes, something that you would do every day that keeps you logging into the environment and maintaining that familiarity with it, increasing your reputation, gaining more experience. So rather than sitting through a 2-hour workshop where you have to block out the time and then walk out the door and possibly forget everything that's been talked about, the idea behind the dailies is that you only need to invest 10 minutes a day and you can do one task a day and keep logging in, keeping up that familiarity with the environment without having to invest a large block of time at once. So this is level 1. You'll see again I've got immediate feedback that I've done the right thing. I've unlocked quite a number of things in level 1. I've unlocked a new zone. And this ties in with the narrative. And the dailies are based on narrative. It's a fairly rudimentary CSI style of narrative, simply because that's familiar to a lot of people and it's fairly easy for my dodgy narrative skills to navigate. And you'll also notice that largely we're not referring to explicit Moodle skills. We've unlocked abilities that relate to skills in Moodle, but we're following the narrative. And that's the case with a lot of commercial games. Learning is never an explicit goal of those games. Say that you are learning to kill new characters, but it's not articulated that you're learning to develop these skills. You're just asked to complete the task. And a lot of the most effective games have very implicit learning rather than explicit. So here we're not explicitly teaching any Moodle skills at all. We're relying on the narrative to foster implicit learning of Moodle skills. Now again, because I've unlocked the first level, I now have a task or a quest. In this particular environment, we're using the terminology mission simply because it ties in with the narrative. And you'll see also, because I chose in the first instance to do the 1-star completion, I've unlocked the 1-star completion in level 1 to attempt. And that's something that allows me to move through at a 1-star completion level. But if I decide in future that I'd like to attempt that to a higher level, I want to go back and increase my skills a bit, I can actually reset my completion conditions and attempt that higher level. And you can see now that I've changed that, I've unlocked the 2-star completion option rather than the 1-star. So it gives a really flexible environment for staff to work to their own abilities. I'll swap now to the back end so you can see from a design perspective some of the things I've used to build the dailies. You'll see that it's quite long for a start. And primarily I've used really simple features of Moodle to build it. For the majority of it, I'm using labels, pages and discussion forums, and that's it. Labels give me the visual design ability, but there's no use of any really complex tools at this stage in the dailies. So it's not something that's difficult to build from a technical point of view at all. It's very straightforward. What it is using is the activity completion conditions that Moodle 2 has available. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Moodle 2 completion criteria, you'll see that from a design point of view, every resource, every activity in Moodle has these restriction criteria applied to it. So I can create dependent activities based on what somebody has done with a previous activity. And what that looks like from the back end is this. We're using our access restriction conditions and our activity completion conditions. So I'm able to set completion conditions based on any resource or activity that I already have in Moodle that has completion criteria applied to it. One thing to note is that when you are using labels quite frequently so that you can very easily create a graphic interface, naming is of utmost importance. Labels take the name of whatever the first part of the text in the label is. So if you have 10 labels that start with the same phrase or that only have graphics in them, it's going to make them very difficult to identify when applying completion conditions. That's something I learnt the hard way. You can have as many conditions as you like for completion. I often find that most of mine have at least 2 completion conditions applied. One will be that they have to have clicked in the previous level. Once they've finished it, they will have had to have clicked the click here to go to the next level URL. And they also will have a completion condition based on whether they chose the 1, 2 or 3 star completion in the previous level. The hide activity entirely option is a really useful one to give an authentic games interface, simply because it keeps anything that you're not currently working on, that you haven't currently unlocked, completely hidden and you're not aware that it's there. Applying completion criteria to activities really depends on what kind of resource or activity you're working with. This is a label that we're looking at, and labels only have the option to allow individual people to mark activities as completed, so we're relying on self-reporting. However, if you choose something like a forum, you can apply conditions based on whether or not they've started a discussion, whether they've replied to a discussion, whether they've done both. If it's a URL, you can apply the condition that they must have clicked on it and viewed it. So depending on what you've done, you've got more or less fine control over the activity completion conditions. But as soon as you set them, that then allows you to apply that as a restriction condition for the next level. Now, you will have noticed that the back end of the dailies is really rather long. It's quite guilty of the Moodle scroll of death that we often see in Moodle courses, simply because it's very vertical. Not much you can do about that from the back end, because you'll see everything, and that often, if you're using the 1, 2 and 3 star streamed idea, you will have 3 of everything. So you'll have 3 very similar items and you'll see all of them. But from the end user point of view, there's one little trick that can really make that nicer, and this works whether you're doing a game-based environment or not. But this little unmarked square in the corner here triggers the show only topic X function. But the beauty of that is that it's simply a URL that you can copy like anything else. And what that means is that you can use that link that you've copied and add it as a URL resource, like I've done here. And I've done that at the end of every level, so that when they're moving through, their screen is kept quite clear of extraneous garbage of previous levels or next levels, so that they're only ever working on the current level, which, aside from being a better user experience, is a more authentic game experience as well. So you can see that just using some really simple features of Moodle and rethinking design conceptually, it's quite easy to create a games environment. I say it's quite easy. There was a lot of background problem solving that went into, that ultimately led to quite easy solutions. But there were quite a lot of head-banging moments and long hours in the initial design, and there were quite a number of times I went completely back to the drawing board and started again. But once you've resolved some of those issues, it's really quite simple to start designing the environment. What I should mention just before I disappear is that the reason that I'm doing this video in the first place is, while Moodle allows guest access, any course that is dependent on conditional activities requires those to be logged against an authenticated user, which means that I can't let people outside of my institution go through the Moodle Dailies and play them, which is kind of frustrating, but I can at least provide a video to walk you through.